All right, with that being said, let's head out to Paul. Paul's got an aircraft engine question. Wow.
Okay, Larry, so you know who I am. I'm Paul.
Yeah.
And this stems from your conversation a few minutes ago about the two-cycle oil. So to set this question up, I've been in aviation 50 years also, and going back to the 60s, they used 87 octanes in the aircraft engines. When that went away, they went to 100 low lead, which wasn't really low lead, just called low lead, that was used in the high compression and low compression engines. And since my engine is low compression, it didn't really like the 100 low lead. I got a lot of lead fouling in the spark plugs. And what ended up happening in the industry is they went to this STC, which allowed automotive fuel, which is an authorization in the aircraft engines, which for low altitude works for me. So then they said to add some lubricant, and I've been using I think the Marvel Mystery Oil for some time now, a couple ounces in a 5-gallon container, and that's what I've been using. But I didn't know about your carbon conversation until just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, duh, huh?
So now I'm thinking, hey, well, I haven't had any problems, but it's never too late to change and improve.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going with this. So I guess I should probably just maybe use up what I got and just go to a standard two-cycle oil.
Well, I would prefer you to use the 100-to-1 Amsoil because see, there's no carbon in it to create a problem, and you know it'll burn completely, as opposed to leaving traces of carbon behind. See, Paul, what I get folks over the years. You can imagine some of the crazy fads that I have seen started in the automotive industry. There was one guy that I guess that convinced everybody to pour regular rubbing alcohol in their gas, and that was supposed to be something that was good. And things like that will get started, and it's bizarre. I don't know how it ever done. And then we go and we start looking at engine additives and stuff. Things like Slick 50, if anybody remembers that disaster. That was the quickest way in the world to take a motor out. And I'm like, wow, so this type of stuff, it can become literally toxic in the industry. Whereas the two-stroke, anybody that has ever mixed fuel and two-stroke together knows it mixes extremely thoroughly, easily. It literally, they bind together. And when you have that, you've got a fuel that is actually lubricating the entire fuel system. And as long as we can keep that from turning into any type of carbon, we're just so far ahead of the game. The engines run so smooth and predictable when they have a little bit of lubricant in them. And it's the same way with a diesel engine. Diesel engines, boy, their fuel systems, my goodness. Boy, those things come apart. Them injector pumps on those Fords with the 6.7s, them injector pumps come apart, and they literally take out everything. I mean, we're talking $10,000, $12,000 to get a fuel system back on one of them. And it's because they're running ultra-low sulfur diesel with no lubrication in it whatsoever. So the fuel systems are eventually going to die in them. They make a fuel disaster kit to put on them to prevent you from taking out the injectors, too, whenever the injection pump goes bad, which I wish more people would take advantage of. But I get people that would come in to the shop, Paul, and you know what they would be telling? I mix a half a quart of transmission fluid in with my gasoline. I'm sitting here going, "You doing what?" Well, you're putting transmission fluid in your engine, in with your gasoline. I'm like, oh my gosh, that motor, everything inside of it would be so carboned up that I can't even imagine what it would look like if you pulled the thing apart. Well, when you start getting into these additives like Marvelous Mystery Oil, listen, they have their place. They're great for a lot of applications, but you're never, ever going to hear me recommend it as a fuel additive. There's a lot better choices out there than that. I know everybody, even you, are looking at it from the potential gain as far as, giving your fuel system and the valve some lubrication, and that's a great thing, but it's what it has the potential of leaving behind, where you're using something that was never intended for that particular application. I'm not saying that people haven't used it for a long time and had decent luck out of it, but when you've got carbon that develops on top of a piston or in a combustion chamber, you're inadvertently actually increasing the compression ratio when you develop carbon, because anything that you use that starts taking up place in a combustion chamber on top of a piston is going to raise the compression ratio. I couldn't tell you percentage-wise how much, but anytime you raise compression ratio, especially in something like an aircraft motor, well, you're going to have a higher octane fuel in order to combat detonation, and that's the last thing in the world you want to be experiencing at 4,000 or 5,000 feet. So, I think that the Amsoil 100 to 1, I would never recommend anything for an aircraft, by the way. I'm talking strictly automotive. But in your case, if I owned your airplane, that's what I would use. But I would never recommend anybody to do anything other than original equipment, whatever specified from the manufacturer when it comes to any kind of an aircraft. Of course, I would use Amsoil in the crankcase as well, if it was mine. But there's reasons, and we could talk a whole show about why Lycoming and Continental and those engine manufacturers have chosen to use a lot of different types of lubrication, and I can understand why, too. Thanks for the call, Paul. Larry Perry here.
Thank you, sir.
For automotive information, maybe you got automotive questions on cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Maybe you're thinking about purchasing a used vehicle, and maybe you just want my opinion. Tune in to the Magic Mechanic radio show every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. on wdbo.com. Also, tune in to our Magic Mechanic YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll all get together, maybe fix a few cars while we're at it.